She does little logo things on her laptop. That was how my brother described my career at Thanksgiving dinner. He said it while cutting his turkey, not even looking up. It's cute, he added. Good creative outlet. But real business operations, staff, margins, liability, that's a different animal. Some people are built for it, and some people are better suited to the creative side. No shame in that, Darcy. We all have our lane. My father made a sound of agreement, not words, just a sound. My mother passed the gravy. I said, "You're probably right," and I ate the rest of my meal and helped clear the table and drove home without crying, which I'm choosing to count as a victory because I wanted to. What my brother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the person sitting across from him, doing little logo things, had been wiring $2,800 directly into his business account every single month for 20 months. Without me, his restaurant would have gone cold 12 months ago. The staff he was so proud of employing, I was covering their paychecks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Darcy. I'm 29 years old and I run a brand design agency out of a rented studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I have 12 active clients. I charge premium rates, and I have never once announced that at a family dinner. Growing up, I was the quiet one. My brother Pierce was 3 years older and operated on a completely different frequency, loud, magnetic, and absolutely certain that the world was waiting specifically for him. Pierce was the kind of kid who gave speeches at school assemblies and somehow made them not embarrassing. He lettered in 3 sports. He got into a business program at a state school that our father considered excellent and very practical. I went to an art school 40 minutes away and studied graphic design. When I told my parents, my father looked at me for a long moment and said, "So you want to draw things for a living?" "Design things," I said. "It's different." He nodded in the way people do when they're not actually listening. Pierce graduated, got a job at a financial firm in Atlanta, and immediately became the family's benchmark for what success looked like. Every conversation found its way back to Pierce. Pierce got promoted. Pierce is dating someone great. Pierce went to Cabo with his work friends. My mother relayed these updates with a brightness she reserved specifically for him. I took note. I didn't say anything about it. I freelanced for a while after school. Wedding invitations, logos for small businesses, social media graphics. My mother called it getting experience. My father called it keeping busy until something real comes along. What they couldn't see was that I was building something the same way you build a brick wall, one course at a time, from the ground up, while everyone around you looks at the horizon. By the time I was 26, I had registered an LLC, hired 2 contract designers, and was pulling in more revenue per month than I let on to anyone. I lived simply. I drove a used Subaru. I didn't take vacations I couldn't write off. Every extra dollar cycled back into the business. My parents thought I was getting by. I let them think that. Then Pierce lost his job. He called me on a Tuesday in March. He wasn't panicking. Pierce never panicked. It wasn't in his makeup. But there was an edge under his voice I hadn't heard before. The firm was downsizing, he said. The whole department. Nothing personal. "I've actually been thinking about this," he said, and I could hear him already reframing it, already turning the loss into a pivot. "I want to open a restaurant." I paused. A restaurant. Southern food. Upscale but approachable. Nashville's market is completely underserved for what I have in mind. I've been sketching the concept. Pierce had never cooked anything more complicated than pasta from a box. I didn't say that. "What do you need?" I asked. He had a savings fund. He had a small business loan lined up. He just needed a silent partner for operating costs while he got things established. Someone who believed in the vision. He had a spreadsheet. He had a timeline. 6 months to break even, 12 months to profitability. He had a partnership agreement drafted where I'd receive 15% equity in exchange for the capital contributions. I knew enough about the restaurant industry to know his timeline was optimistic. I knew enough about Pierce to know that pointing that out would start a fight I didn't want to have at the beginning of a working relationship with my brother. I signed the agreement. I transferred the first payment in April. The restaurant opened 6 months later. It was beautiful. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, a chalkboard menu, the whole package. Pierce named it something with a French article even though the food was Southern, which in retrospect was a sign I filed away and ignored. My parents flew in for opening night. My father wore a blazer. My mother teared up during the toast. Pierce stood at the entrance, shaking hands like a man running for office. I had designed the entire brand, the logo, the menus, the website, the signage on the front window. I did it because he asked and because I was genuinely good at it, and I charged him nothing because he was my brother, and I wanted him to succeed. He thanked me in an Instagram post where he tagged the restaurant's account and described the branding as clean. Didn't mention my name. The restaurant struggled from month one. Food costs were high. He'd overstaffed the front of the house for his current volume. The location was good, but parking was a problem, and Nashville regulars are slow to commit to new spots. He told me each month that things were leveling out, that he just needed one more payment to bridge the gap. I kept paying. Meanwhile, Pierce was living a life that looked nothing like a person managing a struggling operation. He bought a condo near the restaurant. He drove a leased truck I knew cost more than his owner's draw. He took weekend trips. He posted photos, bourbon bars, rooftop sunsets, friends laughing around a crowded table, with captions about sacrifice and vision, and what building something real actually looks like. His Instagram had 17,000 followers. They all believed him. My Instagram had maybe 300 people. I used it to post client mock-ups and process work. Nobody found it inspiring. That was fine. I wasn't building for Instagram. The months stacked. Month 5, month 8, month 11. The equity documentation he'd promised stayed in that PDF, nowhere near estate filing. When I raised it around month 9, he said, "Darcy, the business is still in growth mode. We'll formalize everything once we hit stability. You're not worried, are you?" "I just want it documented," I said. "You're so cautious," he said, and the way he said it meant something else entirely. I let it go. I kept paying. By month 14, I had transferred $39,200 into Harvest Table LLC. By month 17, it was $47,600. The restaurant had not broken even. Pierce had started a second account dedicated to documenting the journey of building a Nashville institution. 30,000 followers on that one. My parents forwarded me a local blog piece where he'd been quoted about the next wave of Southern dining. "This is so exciting," my father texted me. "He's really doing it." I typed back, "That's great," and then opened my client dashboard, looked at my 12 active projects, and thought something uncharitable that I tried to let pass. I mostly let it pass. Until Thanksgiving. I'd been planning to bring up the equity question over the holiday weekend. I had specific things I wanted to ask, and I had prepared myself to be calm and direct and not make it a whole thing. I believed in keeping conversations civil even when they were uncomfortable. We were at my parents' house in Franklin, the formal dining room with the cloth napkins and the good plates, and a centerpiece with real flowers, the room my mother reserved for company and holidays. Pierce arrived last, which he always did, with a bottle of wine and that quality he had of filling a room without trying. My mother hugged him several seconds longer than she'd hugged me when I arrived. My father immediately asked about the restaurant, and Pierce settled into his chair and held court. Things were going really well, he said. They were booking private events now. He was in talks with a local brewery about a collaboration. He had a concept for a second location taking shape. I sat across from him and listened and said nothing. Then my uncle asked about my work. I said I was busy, that things were going well, that I had a new client in the healthcare space I was genuinely excited about. "Healthcare?" my uncle said, like I'd mentioned something mildly baffling. "Like their pamphlets?" "Brand identity," I said. "Logo system, style guides, digital assets, packaging if they have a product line." My uncle nodded the way people do when they're waiting for you to finish. And then Pierce said it casual, still looking at his plate. "She does little logo things on her laptop." He reached for more mashed potatoes. "It's cute. Good creative outlet. But real business. Like what I'm doing, the operations, the staff, the margins, that's a different animal. Some people are built for it and some people are better suited to the creative side. No shame in that, Darcy. We all have our lane." My father made that sound. My mother passed the gravy. I looked at my brother, at his face, which was completely comfortable. Completely certain that what he'd just said was both accurate and kind. He wasn't trying to hurt me. That was the part that landed heaviest. He genuinely believed it. He believed it because I had let him. "You're probably right," I said. I ate the rest of my meal. I helped clear the table. I hugged everyone goodbye in a way that was completely normal in every observable way. I drove back to my apartment across town and sat in my parking garage for 10 minutes without moving. Some people are better suited to the creative side. I thought about the partnership agreement in my filing cabinet. I thought about 20 months of wire transfers. I thought about the restaurant's Instagram account, which had a story posted 3 hours ago. Pierce behind the bar, golden light, the caption reading, "This is what building looks like." I thought about my own client dashboard, 12 clients, signed retainer contracts, a net margin my accountant had described, without prompting, as genuinely impressive for a solo operation of this size. I went upstairs, I opened my laptop. I pulled up my bank's scheduled transfers page and found the line, $2,800, monthly, recipient, Harvest Table LLC. I sat with my hand on the mouse. Then I clicked edit, then I clicked cancel, then I clicked confirm. The page refreshed. The transfer was gone. I made tea. I went to bed earlier than usual. I slept better than I had in months. The call came on a Monday morning. I was mid-conversation with a client when Pierce's name lit up my screen. I let it go to voicemail, then another call, then a text, "Darcy, call me. Something's wrong with the transfer." I finished my client call, I answered 2 emails, I made a second cup of coffee. Then I called him back. "The wire didn't come through," he said immediately. "I've got payroll Wednesday, invoices due Friday, and my account is sitting at $1,100. Something went wrong on your end." "Nothing went wrong," I said. "I canceled it." Silence. "You what?" "I canceled the recurring transfer. I won't be sending a payment this month." "Darcy." His voice dropped into a register I hadn't heard from him since childhood. "This is not a good time for a joke." "I know it's not. That's why it isn't one. I have staff depending on this. I know what you have," I said. "I've been paying for it for 20 months. You're an investor. That's what investors do. Investors get equity documentation. Investors get financial statements. Investors don't get described as doing little logo things at Thanksgiving, while their capital keeps someone else's lights on." Long silence. "Is this about what I said at dinner?" His voice shifted into something almost bewildered. "Darcy, I was making conversation. I didn't mean." "I know you didn't mean it," I said. "That's actually the whole point." "He called our parents?" "Of course he did. My mother called me that afternoon, her voice careful the way it got when she was trying to manage a situation. Pierce had told them I'd pulled my investment without warning. He might have to close the restaurant. He framed it as one loan recently recalled, without mentioning 20 months or $56,000. My father called that evening. His voice was not careful at all. "Your brother built something real," he said. "He has employees. He has a reputation. And you're going to do this over a misunderstanding at dinner?" "I'd like to show you both something," I said. "Can we meet?" "I don't need to meet, I need you to." "Dad," I used a tone I hadn't used with him before. "Can we meet?" He said yes. I came to their house on Saturday. Pierce was already there. My mother was in the kitchen doing things she didn't need to do. My father sat with his arms crossed. I had a folder. It was just a manila folder from an office supply store, but it was heavy. I sat across from Pierce and set it on the coffee table. "Before anyone says anything, I want to show you the actual timeline." I laid out the bank statements. 20 months of wire confirmations highlighted in yellow, 4 rows of 5 on the coffee table. $2,800 a month, I said. 20 months, $56,000 total. My mother sat down. Pierce started to speak. I kept going. "There's a partnership agreement." I set it on top of the statements, signed by both of us. 15% equity in Harvest Table LLC in exchange for operating capital. Pierce has received 20 months of contributions without filing the equity paperwork or providing a single financial statement. My father picked up the bank statements. He was a man who had spent his career in financial sales. He understood exactly what he was looking at. He went very quiet. $56,000, he said. "Yes." Pierce leaned forward. "That money was an investment. Investments carry risk." "Investments come with documentation," I said. "And they don't come with public declarations that the investor does little logo things." "I don't see why you're making this about that." "Because it is about that," I said. My voice was steady in a way I hadn't planned on but was grateful for. "You took $56,000 from me over 20 months while telling me to my face, and to everyone else, that I don't understand what a real business looks like. I reached into the folder, so I want to show you what mine looks like. I pulled out my revenue statements. 3 years broken down quarterly, my client roster with the contract values visible, a summary letter from my accountant laying out my net income for the previous fiscal year. I placed them on the table next to Pierce's wire transfers. My father looked at the numbers for a long time. "This is from your design work," he said slowly. "Brand design agency," I said, 12 active clients. Average retainer is $4,500 a month. The accountant's letter has my annual net on the last line. You can read it. My mother leaned over. Nobody spoke for close to a full minute. Pierce's face had done something I'd never seen it do. It had gone completely still. Not angry, just still. The performance had stopped, and underneath it was something that looked exactly like a person realizing they'd fundamentally misread a situation. "You've been making this," my father said, pointing at the net income line, "the whole time?" "For 3 years. The first year I was building. The second year I was stable. This year I'm scaling." I looked at him. "I tried to tell you once. About 2 years ago, when I mentioned I was bringing on my first contractor, you said don't hire until you're sure you can cover the liability, which is good advice. I was already sure. I already had the coverage. I just stopped trying to explain after that." My father set the papers down. He looked at Pierce. Pierce was studying his hands. "You took $56,000 from your sister," my father said, quiet in a way that was worse than loud. "It was an investment," Pierce said, "but it was hollow now. We could all hear it." I pulled out one more page. "I spoke to a business attorney last week. She prepared a demand letter. I haven't sent it. I'd rather handle this without going that route. But that's Pierce's call." Pierce looked at the letter. He looked at me. "Darcy," he said, "just my name, nothing after it." I stood up. I picked up my folder. "I'm not trying to destroy the restaurant," I said. "I mean that. But I need either the equity filed correctly with real reporting going forward, or a repayment plan on the balance, or both. What I won't do is keep sending money in silence while Pierce builds a public profile on top of it and tells me I don't understand real business." I looked at my parents. I should have said this sooner. I didn't. Because in this family, the assumption about me has always been fixed. I figured it wasn't worth arguing with. I paused. I hope I was wrong about that. I said goodbye. I walked to my car. I sat there for a moment, same as I had in my parking garage 10 days before, but it felt different. The air outside felt different. I drove back to my studio. It was a Saturday, but I had work I'd been putting off, and suddenly I wanted to do it. I wanted to sit at my desk in the space I paid for and open the files I'd earned and do the work I'd been doing quietly all along while everyone was looking somewhere else. The weeks after that were uncomfortable, not unbearable, just uncomfortable, which is what honesty often feels like at first. Pierce met with his accountant and discovered what I already knew. The restaurant was not profitable and had not been for most of its life. My attorney formalized the equity 2 weeks later. 15% of Harvest Table LLCs registered with the state. It wasn't worth much right now. It might never be worth much. But it was documented and it was real. And when Pierce talked about the restaurant from that point forward, there was a paper somewhere with my name on it. We also worked out a repayment schedule on the balance exceeding equity value. Modest, long. I had the attorney write it up anyway, because I had learned at some cost that verbal agreements with family are not agreements at all. Pierce came to my studio on a Sunday in January. I hadn't invited him, but I wasn't surprised. He stood in the doorway and looked around at the monitors, the Pantone guides on the shelf, the client mood boards pinned to the wall. "This is nice," he said. "Thanks." He sat in the client chair across from my desk. He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't know it was this serious," he said. "What you were doing." "I know. I think I needed it to be smaller." He said it slowly, like he was finding the words while he spoke them. "What you were doing so that what I was doing felt bigger." It was the most honest thing I had ever heard my brother say. "Yeah," I said. "I figured that out eventually." He looked at the client board on the wall. "Who's that one?" "Healthcare company out of Chicago. Full rebrand this quarter." "And you run all of this yourself?" "2 designers I contract, a bookkeeper, my attorney." I looked at him. "A business." He nodded slowly, like the word was taking on a different weight than it used to carry. "I'm sorry," he said. For what I said at Thanksgiving, and 4, he gestured at the space between us, meaning the 20 months and the 56,000 and all the quiet years of it. For all of it! I know, I said. We didn't hug. We're not really huggers. But something settled between us that I don't have a clean word for. Not forgiven exactly, but acknowledged. And acknowledgement is somewhere to build from. My parents call more than they used to. My father asks me actual questions now, about my clients, about how I structure retainers, about what I look for before bringing on a new contractor. The first time he asked with something that seemed like real curiosity. I held the phone and waited a second before answering, because I wasn't sure I trusted it yet. But I answered. My mother sent me a handwritten card in February. She said she was proud of me and that she was sorry it had taken her this long to say it out loud. She said she knew she'd given Pierce more space than she'd given me for a long time, and she wanted to do better if I'd let her. I kept the card, because she wrote it by hand instead of texting, and somehow that made it feel like she meant it. Pierce's restaurant is still open. It's doing better now, actually. He brought on a general manager who actually knows food service, and the food costs have come down to something sustainable. He posts less on Instagram than he used to. The captions are shorter. Less performance, a little more truth. He texted me last month to say my branding was holding up, that people still commented on it. He asked if I'd be interested in redesigning the menu for a spring refresh. I said yes. I sent him a quote. He paid the invoice on time. I still drive my Subaru. My studio is still the same rented space, though I've cleared a desk for a third contractor who starts next month. I don't post about my revenue or my client list or my equity stake in a Nashville restaurant. I don't need to. I know every contract in that folder, every client call, every late night at the monitor when the work was hard and no one was watching, and I did it anyway. I know it the way you know things you've earned yourself, the knowledge that lives in your hands and not just your head. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody saw it until I laid it on a coffee table and made them look. But it was there the whole time. I was there the whole time. The only thing that changed was I stopped pretending otherwise.